was like an unstoppable energy, really, and then it just spread out from Manchester, you know, throughout the UK and then to Europe and the world, really. I started working as a documentary photographer. I started developing my own black and white pictures at a place called Counter Image, which was on Whitworth Street, which is just up the road from the Hacienda. And I came out, because before I started taking photographs in the Hacienda, I used to go there as a punter. And one night I came out like 2 o'clock in the morning, I was walking past and I saw this sign in the window saying, you know, do you want to learn how to develop and print your own pictures? And I was like, oh, I'll go for that. So I used to go there, and one of the first things they got us to do was like take pictures of stuff that you liked or loved in Manchester. So one of the first things I took pictures of was the Hacienda. I came out of there, out of Counter Image, turned right, and took a photograph of the outside of the Hacienda, and then went across the road and took a wider picture. But I never thought that I'd be in there a few years later, just taking photographs all the time. Yeah, I mean, well, basically, I love the music, and I love electronic music and dance music, and basically, when I was younger, my mum and dad used to take photographs with the family camera, and my dad was a good photographer, and he saw that I was quite good at it, so he bought me a camera, and that's when I got really into it. And then after Counter Image, I started working for a co-op, a photography co-op in Manchester with 2 other photographers, and I learnt sort of documentary photography, and we were covering a lot of like demonstrations and stuff that was going on in Manchester at the time. And and then I started working for City Life. I took my portfolio into City Life, which was like Time Out magazine in London, and then they started sending me to clubs and doing portraits and fashion shoots and all sorts of stuff. And then sort of acid house happened just at that time that was happening for me. And then I moved into a studio in Sackville Street, and in the building there was me, there was Johnson Panassa, who used to design all the posters for the Hacienda. There was Central Station Design, who did all the Happy Mondays covers, design for the albums. The Spiral Carpets in there had an office, and they used to print all their t-shirts, the Moo t-shirts and the Cool as Fuck t-shirts used to be printed there. And then also the Bailey brothers, who used to make all the Happy Mondays videos. So it was like this real creative hub of all those, and we used to just like I'd walk from my studio and go and see what Central Station were up to and look at their, what their designer was doing, and they'd come and look at stuff of mine, and so it was a real community. And basically it just took off from there, really. And I took pictures of the Happy Mondays in it was The Other Side of Midnight, which was Tony Wilson's programme, and they did an end of series party, an end of series rave with the Happy Mondays, and a guy called Gerald and Mike Pickering were DJing, a guy called Gerald was playing, and Tony Wilson asked me to come and take some photographs, which I did, and I spoke to him before the gig was on, because it was being filmed by Granada. And I said, where can I go, on the stage, Tony? And he said, you can go anywhere. So basically I was about 4 foot or 5 foot away from Sean Ryder, and I took a really nice series of photographs of him, and I sent them down to the NME. And then when they got them the day after, Helen Mead, who's the live editor for the NME, she called me and said, do you want to work in the north of England for the NME? So I was like, yeah. So that was it, really. I was off then. And I was just working all the time. Yeah, it was quite amazing, really, because there was a real, at the time, Thatcher had been in power for quite a number of years, and for young people, it was sort of basically, everyone was she sold everyone out, basically. She was like, not bothered about you, and they don't care. And so with the house music coming in, and the second Summer of Love, there was an explosion of creativity, and then all these people were going to the Hacienda and other clubs, and like thinking, right, I can be a DJ, or I can be a promoter, or I can start a fashion label. So it was like a real opportunity of people going, wow, this is amazing, And there was, and it was a real community, like you knew everyone who went to the Hacienda, and it was quite underground for a couple of years before it went mainstream. And basically, yeah, people thought I can do this, I can do anything really. And also that, like, you'd be in the Hacienda and there was no VIP area, because Tony Wilson said they were communists in the Hacienda. So basically you'd be in there and you bump into New Order and Happy Mondays and Spiral Carpets. But people people wouldn't hassle them. You're just like, all right, how you doing? And you carry on. So there was it was a real community atmosphere, and it was a real, really significant culturally. And because I had that documentary training from working as a documentary photographer, I sort of realised how important it was, and that's why I took a lot of photographs of what was going on, as well as stuff for the NME. And not really, it was just basically, it sort of happened over a couple of months over the summer. And because I was quite into history and had seen documentaries about the 60s and the Stones and all that sort of stuff, and I was like, there's something really happening here, and it's like right on the doorstep, so it's really important. And I thought there'd be a movement, and it would keep, it would go for a few years, but like 30 years later, like a lot of new artists are referencing back to the early acid house days now. And it just felt like, it was sort of, like local bands were making music and producing music, like 808 State and a guy called Gerald and Spirals, the Happy Mondays. And suddenly Manchester became the centre of the attention for the world. There was people coming over from Europe all the time, people from America. Newsweek did a big story on acid house and the sort of fashion and clubs and Manchester. And it just exploded. And so, and I'm from Manchester anyway, and it was just like, wow, this is on my doorstep. And and to be working, because basically the enemy would say, all right, Primal Scream are playing the Hacienda on Wednesday night or Thursday night, go down and you want to photograph them. Yeah, great. So it was just a fantastic experience. And also I had the studio in the centre of Manchester, so I'd work like in the Hacienda or other places and photograph the gigs. And then I'd go back to the studio and process the black and white films, and then print them up and then send them to London next day. So I'd be up all night, and then the next day I'd be shooting in the afternoon again. So it was non-stop for about 2 years. Like not every night doing gigs, but like I was doing 6 or 7 jobs a week, for all different magazines. So yeah, I just realised, I thought, this is really something happening here that just needs to be recorded. Yeah, I think that the sort of all the cultural influences from fashion, the music, the people, all the different aspects of it, like the graphic design, the album covers, everything just sort of fed into it. It was like, and also people were inspired by each other. Like a guy called Gerald and Graham from 808 State, they'd be making tracks and they'd take them down to the Hacienda, give them to John De Silva, and then he'd play it, and then they'd look at the reaction of the crowd, and then they'd go, right, okay, we'll take it back, go back to the studio up the road, and then they'd redo it slightly and bring it back and give it to John again, and he'd play it again, and they're like, oh, that's better reaction. So it was like, everyone was trying to help each other, and say, and so it was like, it was definitely everything. I was inspired by everything, and like like fashion, and the t-shirts, and it was like a real explosion of creativity, really. Yeah, I think the influence of acid house from like 30 years ago is still being felt now, like in the music, in fashion. It's like you BODA Skins, putting these pictures on t-shirts and sweatshirts, and they look amazing, and the jacket, it's just like, to see it in real life is just fantastic, And so I think that it's inspiring a younger generation as well, like a lot of the people now who are into like acid house music or that sort of house music from that time, weren't even born, and then they're creating their own stuff, or they're going to clubs that are playing this sort of music. And they're 18 or 19 or 20, so they weren't even born at the time when it was happening. So the fact that it's influencing them is quite incredible, really. But I think like the collection that BODA Skins have done has really captured it. It's really captured the essence of the time, and it feels like a great honour to have my photographs on the clothing, because it's such a nice company, and it just. Like when I saw the clothes today for the first time, because Laura sent me pictures of them, like on PDFs and stuff, but to see them in real life and then see them on models, it's quite incredible. Yeah, really amazing feeling. So definitely captured the essence of it. Definitely, three words to bottle up the essence of the time. I think acid house forever.
There we go.
Yeah, well, the energy in the Hacienda was quite incredible, and the pink photograph that I took from the balcony, the pink that's on the jacket, and that, I mean, the other thing as well at the time, like now, like there's digital cameras and you know, like you can have 1,000 shots on one little chip, but you know, they only had a couple of rolls of film each night, or 3 or 4 rolls of film. And so I was stood on the balcony, and I wanted to, as well as capture getting really close with the clubbers on the dance floor and feel their, you know, you'd be right close to them and get really nice shots of them and really into the moment. I really wanted to get wide shots of the club to capture what was going on. And the guys who used to do the lights used to be called the tall boys because they were tall, and the colour washes that they used to put through were quite amazing. But so for that pink Hacienda photograph, I took about 12 or 14 frames, and the lights were changing all the time. And there's the 2 frames that I got of that. There's that pink Hacienda one and a more red one that were really nice. And yeah, and the energy was just incredible. The energy of the club was incredible, and the energy, as well as the Hacienda that would seep out into Manchester, was you know, you can't sort of describe it really. It's like everyone was, you know, it's like buzzing if you like, you know. There's a word from that time, you know. It was a nice one, top one gets sorted, you know. It was like it was a real creative energy, if you like, because people thought, actually, I can do this, I can make records. You know, Sasha started DJing, he started going and listening and being in the DJ booth with John De Silva, and he would see how John De Silva mixed stuff. And John De Silva, you know, he would play on the hot nights, he would play, it would be absolutely rammed with people, and the sweat would be dripping from the floor, from the ceiling, from the sweat would, the condensation was dripping from the ceiling. And he started putting thunder and lightning samples on as before in between the tracks, and people would just go absolutely mad, you know. And it was just a real, it was like an unstoppable energy really, and then it just spread out from Manchester, you know, throughout the UK and then to Europe and the world really. So it was an incredible time.